Hey guys, welcome back to a live stream. I think it's the first one for 2020. I don't remember. It's been a while. This is going to be a collaboration live stream slash podcast that I'm going to do with our friend James the Reviver. I'll bring him here in a second. He posted a video recently that I think is an important topic, one that I've struggled with in the past, and I still have to continue to remind myself of the right course of action so I don't get myself into trouble. So hopefully you guys will appreciate that. If for the folks that are here, if you can see and hear me, please give me a big thumbs up. That way, we can double check things. See a couple people here committed to the shift. A long time no see. John Boston and Dan Ski. All right, guys. Okay, so before I jump into all of that, if I can just move my screens around a little bit so I can see what's going on. First thing is disclaimer, I'm not a therapist. I'm an individual, much like you guys, who's come up with some tips and techniques that I've used over the 8 years to maintain my sanity that I hope I can share with you to help you get your life back. Take things under control, minimize the damage, repair the relationship with your children, and just kind of get you back on track. If you're new to the channel and you haven't hit the subscribe button, please subscribe, hit the bell notification so that when I go live, you know. You can go to the website, dadsurvivingdivorce.com, sign up for the newsletter. And if you need or are looking for one-on-one coaching, you can also find information on that at dadsurvivingdivorce.com. The other thing I want to mention before I jump into the interview is next week on Tuesday, I will be doing a collaboration with Eric Carroll from Dad Talk Today. They are really doing some really awesome things. They finished recording their pilot in Georgia for their local thing. They had a bunch of people fly out for that, for their television show. So they'll be starting the second season on that. Eric has asked me to potentially host a weekly show on their Dad Talk Today network. So on the website of it. So I'm going to be looking into that as well. So hopefully you guys will support me on that. So more to come on that. And let me pull James in. Excuse me. Hey, James, can you hear and see me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? I can. Hey, guys, can you tell me if you can see and hear both of us to make sure everything is working well? And it'll take a minute for it to catch up. But hey, James, the reason I wanted to bring you on today is the other day you posted a video. Let me see if I can do this so the folks can see it. I know you're not thrilled about this, but that is too much information. Okay, see, so I got to switch it to just that. There we go. So James had made a video the other day, and he and I had talked about this when he was going through this a little while ago. And it titled, "Is It Worth the Battle?" And I would encourage you guys to check his channel out, subscribe to his channel, and watch that video. And so I mean, James, why don't you give a little bit of background on what your thought process was on that, on the topic of that video and what you were going through?
Well,
no pressure.
I just had a complete brain.
Well, okay. So I'll jump in. So what I'll say is, so I got a call from James. Just so you guys don't know, James is also one of the mods on the channel. So he's been around for a long time. And basically what had happened is his ex had decided she wanted more money and was going back for, basically saying, hey, you need to give me cash or I'm going to make your life miserable. And I remember when you called me, you were like, damn it, do I fight? Do I not fight? And we had a long conversation on different ways to look at that. And I know you had a long time to really process what was going on. And ultimately you basically decided just to settle with her. And I think like, okay, so for me, I continually have things where I have that same dichotomy where I have to look at it and go, crap, is it worth it to wage a war? And it's like, what's the cost? What's the outcome? What am I going to accomplish? And then when you get to the cost thing, a lot of it is it's financial, but it's also emotional, right?
And your time too.
And I think that was a big thing you were talking about. It's like, okay, well, I can fight this, but is it going to drag me down the pit of hell? So let me ask you this: when you were going through that, when you were trying to figure out what to do, because initially you wanted to fight, right? Initially you wanted to go to war. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a delay. Yeah, at first you want to make sure that they don't get a dime, and you're to the point where you're fed up, and you got to keep in mind it had been a year and a half between the last time we had any kind of court or settlement, anything where I went to a hearing or anything like that. So I was done with it. I thought I had completely forgotten about it.
Yeah, you thought it was over.
Well, I forgot about it, but it was my bad to let it linger for as long as it did. And I'll say that with a toxic person, I would not recommend letting any of it linger. Settle it, get it done as quickly as you can.
Oh man, yeah,
you don't want to give them any more ammunition or any more time than you can help, because time is not on your side, where they can brew up different ways to screw you.
Yeah, and the sad part about it is that as you wait on things, you put it in the back of your mind, you're not dealing with it. But when it comes back up, it feels like everything that you put, that year and a half that's in the distance is like, at least for me, feels like it's just pulled immediately right to the forefront. So it might as well happen yesterday instead of a year ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago, right? Is that kind of how you were feeling too?
Yeah, I was almost had to go home from work for seriously, because it was basically the same feeling as right around the very end, right before she left.
Yeah,
is how triggered it made me, and not cool. So yeah, like you said, it's like a year and a half just down the drain, just all the time, just went. Whoop.
Now, fortunately, I would say in my situation, fortunately, when those things happen, I don't feel that way. And I have one that we'll talk about in a little bit, but it's. I think the other thing, and it's really tough, right? Because as the closer you are to the beginning of this, and you made a comment earlier or a second ago where you're like, you don't want them to get anything. You don't want them to get a frickin' dime. And I absolutely can relate to that. I mean, I remember, I can remember it was like, I don't care what it is. I'm not giving you one more frickin' penny, on anything. And that blinded me in a lot of different ways. I mean, that even included, I wasn't even willing to like buy Christmas cards for the kids to give to their mom, because I'm like, that glorious human being has got so much for me. She's not getting another frickin' cent. And someone else had made a comment. Let me see if I can find it. Where it's like, well, what, you do this, but what's the cost? I'm trying to see if I can see it. Yeah. James S. had said, or John S. Sorry, said, that's definitely the big question. You may win the battle, but at what cost? And I mean, and that's really, that's really the key. You can, and I often talk about it in, the battle and the war situation. You can win the battle. I mean, you can say, nope, God dang it, I'm not, like in your situation, you could have said, nope, I'm not going to give her that. And you could have fought on it, and it could have derailed your emotional progress. Financially, it probably would have cost you more. I mean, we were talking about that offline even a few months ago. I mean, that was kind of the thing. It's like, okay, well, you're probably going to lose because technically, since you didn't take care of it before, she's still entitled, quote unquote, to all this stuff. So you don't really have a winning argument. So you're going to spend a bunch of money in attorneys, and then you're going to ultimately have to pay her anyways, and then you might even have to pay her attorneys. Right. And I know that's a bitter pill to swallow. I mean, I remember when we were talking about that, that was not bringing on joyous emotions, to say the least.
Definitely not. Yeah. Well, and you almost can't think of it as winning the battle or the war. You kind of have to, you have to be able to manage the damage is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, no,
and that's what I did is, okay, how much time am I gonna spend out of work?
Yeah.
you know, because I have a bit of a drive to work and back. So you have to account for that. You have to account for how much money you're going to pay your attorney to try to defend you.
Yep.
And then in the end, they may say, well, oh, well, now that we look at it and we've opened this up more,
Oh yeah.
turns out you owe me this and this too. So,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, where's the money?
Well, and then
So that's kind of where I was thinking along those lines. So.
see, and I think that's important though, right? Because I don't know how many people I've heard through the course of this channel and even personally, who where they fight and they just get torpedoed, right? They lose the main argument, and then it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, hey, since we're here, since we've already been here, let's relook at all these other different things. And oh, by the way, you know, child support goes up, or you know, some other bill goes up, and now on top of everything else, you're dealing with a worse situation. So I mean,
Right.
you've been, you know, and I don't know. I'll ask the question for the handful of people that are here. I mean, I would imagine everyone's gone through this, that you've had those situations where you want to fight. So I tell you what, if you've wanted to fight, give a one, or if you have fought, say, you know, one. And if you're at the point now to where you're like, nope, it's really, I mean, unless it's absolutely worth it, you know, don't do it. Put a 2 down. It'd be good to see what different people say on that. Let me look at some of the other comments to see if anyone else is saying or throwing anything else out there. Rebecca says, I'm sorry, but they never let go. Yeah, it's like, and then Dan used these people. It's never over with these people. That's pretty funny. We're trying to work on a counter so we can count that. I know. So, we got a 1 from John S. We got a 2 from Marina. So that's good, Marina. I mean, it's tough to get to that, or it's tough to get to the point where you really can look at it and say, okay, is it worth it? See, I think I'm firmly in the 2 category. I think, James, you're now in the 2 category because you settled, you looked at this, you took a big picture approach on it, and you're like, okay. Actually, I think what you ended up doing is you offered a settlement that was a little bit less that you could deal with, to see if it would go. And didn't she say yes? Didn't?
Yeah, it was an immediate response, like within an hour, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and the way I thought of it was it sucked to have to pay out any kind of money, but I'll make the money back. I'll make the money this year again.
See?
And to me, my time and my peace is worth that small bit of money that I had to hand over to her.
And man, and you know what? And it's interesting because that's a tough position to get into. I mean, just to not get angry. Yeah. Well, you were angry, but I mean, but to get to the point to where you can look at it and go, you know what? It's not worth the cost. And I've done that myself, you know.
If it had been 2 years ago, it would have been a different conversation. It'd be a different video. So
see, and I think that's the reason it's good to have this message or to talk about this, because a lot of us, I mean, well, everyone's gone through that 2 year ago phase, right? I mean, 2 years ago, you were there. Probably 5 years ago, I was there. I mean, there might be some people out there right now. Well, there are some people out there right now who are putting ones. So they're in that mode. And I get it, because when you're in that, and I'm sure you would agree with this, James, that when you're in that mode, you don't care. You're like, no, this is freaking wrong. I'm fighting. I don't care if it costs me money, but you know, if I can spend, you know, $10,000 to save 1,000, that makes sense to you in that mode, because you feel like if you don't, you're just rolling over. They're getting something that they don't deserve. And I think the pivotal point on this is you have to look at it larger picture. And James, you were talking, I mean, you really had it a minute ago, and the same thing that I've looked at. It's like, okay, so if I go to court, is this going to help me get to the goal I want to be in 3 to 5 years? Or is it going to set me back? And if I can make strategic decisions that help me achieve my long-term goal of getting out from underneath this sooner, getting out from underneath the financial burden sooner, that's the case. But I hear you, man. You know, the first couple of years of this, if she would have played like what you're talking about, if that would have, well, no, I'll tell you. And I still think I need to do this, but whenever mine went back for the retirement stuff and there was an error in it and she was going to get a significant amount of money, I had people telling me, my dad, that I should let it go. it was just too much money, but I did. I freaking doubled down and I went back to court and I fought to get that number lowered. And I mean, I think I probably would still do it again today. The problem is that if it was to happen today, I think emotionally I would be in a better place. But like what you were talking about, when I got that gigantic envelope and, came home and I'm like, wow, what's this? Ripped it open and looked at it. And it was for my retirement thing saying, hey, dumbass, I'll just say that. We're taking 100% of everything you have in here and we're giving it to her. Have a nice day. I had a panic attack. I mean, it freaking sent me into Debbie's online as a moderator. I mean, she knows I freaked out and it wasn't this calm, okay, well, let's, how do we address it? I felt like I got sucker punched. And what you were talking about before about getting dragged back to day one, that's the way it felt. Mm-hmm. It was horrible. And I'm still paying that thing off.
I'm glad you brought it up about your father. You got to be careful. I'll say this, like, you have to be careful who you get advice from as far as this goes. Because so many people will be like, and I had it happen, they'll be like, man, if you give her the money, man, you're lame, or you're like,
you're a dumbass. You're
insert
colorful metaphor,
expletive or whatever word. You're a weenie, or whatever. So you got to be careful who you get advice from when it comes to that.
That's very true. I mean, I would say in a lot of ways you probably would just be better off keeping the information yourself. Yeah. I mean, like you talk to, well, I mean, we have a different relationship obviously, but I mean, you talk to me, you find people who understand, who you trust their advice, and you could say, hey, how do I look at this? Right. I mean, but cause like I said, in my situation, my dad said, walk away from it. Just give her all the money. And I'm like, it wasn't like millions or anything like that, but I mean, it was everything that I had saved for 10 decades, I wish, 10 years, through our 401k that already got liquidated in half. It was the last little bit that was in there. And I'm like, you could almost buy a house with what was there. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to just walk away and just hand her that. I mean, I'm not going to do it. Because I also figured whatever. And I think if it happened today, I would still fight it, but I wouldn't be so emotionally freaked out and devastated as a result of it.
Well, and the problem with the mindset of, going to battle with them, and it buys right into their narrative of where they can say, oh, well, look at how he's acting. I can't believe that he's behaving this way. And I just want what's fair for me. And I don't understand why I just can't get what I'm entitled to.
Oh, that's a great point too. And this goes both ways for men or women. I mean, whoever the toxic person is, they will hide behind the family court and I'm not doing anything wrong. I mean, morally or ethically it's wrong, but it's like, it's just what I'm entitled to. And it's like, that's what they'll stick to. Let's see, I'm going to grab this comment. It's committed to the shift, says, that's what I call toxic shock. Sorry, I'm a few seconds behind on the live feed, but you will open the envelope. That's toxic shock, and they thrive on it, and it kills us in many ways. End it ASAP. Yeah, that's a excellent comment. So, John's agreeing with her. Hold on, I'm looking at this. Oh, this is John had said, Duane, my father was in hospice care. I was at my parents' home, and the ex's attorney sent a subpoena for my parents' accounts. I flipped out. Yeah, it's like they have no, I mean, and the key part on that is nothing's off limits to them. And if it's like, I mean, of course,
it's probably calculated in a way.
Oh, absolutely. It's calculated to screw with you. It's calculated to get you stressed, to get that response. It's not good. Yeah, John had also said, whoops, I don't know if I clicked the right one. Says, oh my God, I hate that word. My ex said entitled all the time. All she cared about was herself. What I'll say on that, on the entitled thing, is that word used to irritate me, right? If anyone said it, it would be a trigger. It would be a trigger point, and I would get really mad. It doesn't bother me at all anymore. Which I guess I should think about because, you know, obviously there's going to be people here who are still in the midst of all this. So one thing I would say on that, and I don't know about you, James, I'll get your view on here in a second, but it gets to a point where it doesn't bother me. Won't bother you anymore. And you realize you're entitled to stuff too, but God, they sure love to use those words, you know, well, I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to that. So.
Yeah, I made the mistake.
Go ahead.
I made the mistake of trying to talk to her about how
this,
it was going to, about how it was going to go. And I said, well, what do you want? And that was a big mistake. So don't do that.
Did you get an answer or not?
She didn't say entitled, but she may as well. Oh, she answered instantly.
What'd she say?
She gave a dollar amount.
Oh, okay. I remember when I was going through mine. What was that?
Sadly, she pretty much got about that much when you add everything together. But you know
what? But most of the time, not always, but most of the time, they know what the answer is before they ask, right? They know what they're entitled to. So, you know, I mean, it's just but there's no fairness in it, you know. I mean, the problem is that, you know, they look at it like, well, I'm in, you know, that the family court system says this is the way it works and this is the way the distribution goes. So all I'm getting is everything you owe me, right? And I know saying that there's probably a few people in there who that's been said to them that right, just me saying that can be enough to trigger that just gets your blood boiling.
Yep. Yeah, not cool.
Oh, this is funny. I'll grab this. Leslie says this. She was saying it to Debbie. Says, but he said he was entitled to spiritually empowered coaching. You know, Leslie Powers, with her talking about her ex, says he said he was entitled to it because he was married to me. But funny enough, his parents' cash was off the table, and that's true too. It's like they come up with these. They'll look at this stuff and they'll come up with the rules and in their mind. And it's like, well, no, I mean, everything, I'm entitled to your stuff. You're not entitled to anything that's mine. I remember I actually had, I early on, like, you know, this is the first year of the divorce wasn't even done. And I had asked the ex at one point, I'm like, hey, so what exactly do you want? We got to finish up the stuff. What do you want? Well, I want my half. Okay. What half do you want? Well, I want my half. Okay. What does that mean? What do you, like, do you want, stuff? I want my half. I'm like, Jesus. I mean, what I finally said, I said, you know what? Fine. Okay. You know what? I want my half too. Let's sell everything in probate or an estate sale. We'll do an estate sale. We'll sell everything. We'll split the cash. Not a problem. Do you want to schedule it or do you want me to schedule it? That's what I said to her. And a few days later, I'm like, hey, are you going to schedule the estate sale? Or do I need to do that? And it came to find, she wouldn't, it's like, I don't even know what the hell she ever really wanted. It's just, and part of it is just to keep the argument still going, right? Because if you say something and you say, okay, I want, this list of stuff, and you go, okay, well then it's over. There's no more argument. Or what'll happen is if they do that, which they very rarely do, they'll then turn around and say, and then change their mind, like agree, and then a little bit later unagree to it and say, oh, well now it's different. Now I don't want that. So let me see.
Move the goalpost.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody said that a few minutes ago.
Oh, did they? Who said it?
Yeah, it was a comment. Let's see if I can find it before we're going to race to see who can find it first.
I see nothing is off limits. Committed to Shift said that. Nothing is off limits.
It erases it after a while, huh? If it goes high enough.
Power said my ex went for my parents' accounts too. Yeah, I didn't see. I don't see the other one. I don't know if I
think it
missed
disappeared.
Dang it!
Yeah, you missed it.
I'm an amateur. Lyle asked a question. He says, "Do you think?" Wow, that is like super big. Do you think the family court system could be fixed in a way to disarm the narcs, or would that kill the money train the lawyers are on? Yeah, see, the problem is it would kill the money train that the lawyers are on. But I think the way to fix it is 50-50 presumptive shared care. You know, it's like you go in and it's like you walk out 50-50. Unless there's some significant problem or some other documented problem. Because what happens is, as everybody knows, you go in, it's a knockdown, drag out battle. The only way you get money and control is by taking control of the kids. So that makes the kids the prime target to be able to get everything that a person wants. And if you went in, I mean, like I know for me, if I would have went in and they would have said 50-50 right off that's what I went in for when we first went for our court hearing. I went in for 50-50. If they would have said, there's no reason for it to be no, boom, 50-50, and the child support was set to that, and the alimony was set. To be perfectly honest, I would have been like, okay, we can finish this whenever because I don't care. That didn't happen. She wanted, in my situation, she wanted full custody and me to have every other weekend. And when I asked for 50-50, she asked for that. They met us kind of in the middle. They gave, it was like 30-70 or something. And then I had to battle to get the 50-50. But I think Lyle, that would see, the problem is that would end it, except then what would happen is then they would try to orchestrate more domestic violence type scenarios, because that would be the thing that would actually push it through. Right. Which I know some of us, have dealt with that. So I guess maybe the caveat, like the unintended consequences for 50-50 would be that false allegations would probably even go up more. But, it depends on how they did it, right? I mean, Rebecca says 50-50, amen, go away. That's pretty funny. So.
Did you see John's comment about 2 million?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to pull that up. So John says, unless you have 2 million assets, do not hire an attorney and go to court. The end. I agree with you, John. The problem is whenever you have one person who's like, no, that was my situation, because I tried to like, hey, let's, not do this with attorneys. Nope. I want everything I'm entitled to. I want full custody. I want to move out of the state. I want this. I want, and it's like, they force the issue. And the system is, in my mind, is screwed up because, like in California, the idea is that your ex, like me, is going to pay your attorney fee, right? So it's like, we walked into it with me being ordered to pay about $2,000 of her attorney fee. At least it was only that. Like immediately, it's like you have to start paying $100 a month to pay for her attorney, and if you don't pay, you owe the entire amount immediately, or we're going to take your birthday away. And I think when especially somebody who's, could potentially be, high on the narcissism scale, who isn't thinking clearly, is thinking, oh, okay, well, you're going to pay for it, so I don't care. I'll keep, I'm just going to say no. I'm going to make you pay my attorney and you pay your attorney to try to change it. I remember having a conversation with mine saying, hey, look, let's just settle this. There is no way you're going to get what you're asking for. Everyone I said to her, this is when we were talking on the phone, I'm like, everyone I've talked to, every retired, every judge, attorney, everybody, current and retired, says, I'm going to get 50-50. Just stay the course. You're going to get 50-50. It's just going to cost you a lot of money. And I'm like, look, let's just stop this. We're already thousands of dollars into it. It's going to end up being this. It's going to end up being 50-50 anyways. Let's just knock this stupidness off. And nope, nope. Actually, the funny part on that one, what happened is I asked her a couple of days later, like, can we settle? And because initially she's like, oh wow, really? Okay. And then and I had this epiphany like an hour after that conversation. I'm like, oh dear God, this isn't going to work. And then a few days later, when I bugged her about it, she's like, well, you haven't sent over a settlement. And I'm like, I was asking you if we could settle. Well, you haven't sent over a settlement. I got my attorney. I'm like, hey, you need to send over a settlement. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, well, she's saying this, send over, I basically said, you work for me, you send over a damn settlement. And he sent over a settlement and they wrote back. I said, I want 50-50, yada, yada. 50-50 guideline support, whatever. And the answer came back that, my client is moving out of state and 50-50 won't work if she's in, the Midwest. So I'm like, what? Anyways, good times all the way around.
Well, and you got to be careful with mediation too. I experienced that with a different ex, and that didn't go very well either, because I went in to mediation kind of, trying to be the one to be the peacemaker and
right.
And make sure everything goes, everybody gets their fair settlement or whatever, and it didn't work out. I got completely shafted. So be careful with mediation too.
Well, but see, the problem is that
it's like pick your poison, right? Go to court or go to mediation.
Well, I mean, you're probably better off. Well, most places force you to go to mediation first, right? I mean, there's no way around it. But in most places. But I mean, the problem is that for the person who's has the winning hand, there's no reason to settle, right? I mean, it's like if I have all the marbles and you come to me and you're like, I have 100 marbles, and we go to mediation. You're like, hey, Duane, I want, hey, we collected those together. You just happen to, grab all of them. I want my 50. Well, no, I'm not going to give you. I have 100. If I give you 50, that's the worst case scenario. Is you're going to get 50. So I'm going to make you fight for the frickin' 50 and make it a living hell, because you might say, okay, screw it. You know what? Give me 10 or give me 25, right? And unfortunately, I think that's the problem. That because it's the person who is getting all the money, who has all the time, giving up anything is a loss to them. And that's probably what you experienced, and you would hope that a person, and this is for everyone out there who's listening to, I mean, most people have already gone through this or in the middle of it, but I mean, if you're new at this, realize that if they're ahead on the thing, they're not thinking about what's fair. They're not thinking about what's best for the kids. They're not thinking about what's best for anybody other than, I have all the marbles and I'm not going to just agree to pass these out. I'm going to make it so damn difficult so that you more than likely are not going to take your fair share, or not going to get what you're entitled to, because, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, as some people say, or it's just not worth the cost, like we were talking about before. And the reality is, to tie this back to our other conversation, sometimes it's not worth the cost. It's like, you know what? Maybe 20 is okay. Maybe 20 marbles, do I get to pick the marbles? All right. In this scenario, I have all the marbles. You can stick your hand in and that's it. You can't see. You have to be blindfolded. Damn it.
Oh, and to make matters worse, then if you do settle for 10 marbles, and they'll say, well, look, they didn't really care to begin with. They settled for 10 marbles instead of 30. I would have given them 30.
Yeah,
if they would have fought.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think, and that's where I think it's really important. You have to not, and you brought up, James, you bring up a really great point. And that is, because I think all of us go through that too, where when they do that, it really angers you. But at the end of the day, the reality is it doesn't matter what they say, right? If they say it to your kids, that sucks. But then you just say, right. Hey, pumpkin, you know what? I really wanted it. Just because of the way the system works, I couldn't do it. I ran out of resources. I ran out of money. I ran out of time. I didn't have the time to take, my boss, because this happens too, bosses will be like, hey, really feel for you for going through your divorce. That really sucks. You take any more time off to go to court, you're fired. I don't know if you had to deal with that, but I've known people who, well, not in my business, but I'm, through the channel and stuff, I've known people who've had to go through that. That's a legitimate fear.
That sucks.
And what do you do? I mean, okay, let me back up. I didn't lose my job, but I lost my position for this, right? When this whole thing happened, I was a senior manager. I ran a flight where I worked, which is like 70 to 100 people. I was in charge of all the maintenance, communication electronics, so the computers, the servers, the telephone system, the radio systems, the voicemail, the help desk. All those people worked for me. And because of the divorce, they basically said, you're a full-time dad now. You don't have time to do this. You need to you need to step down. And I told him, fucking fire me. Sorry. Boop. I said, I ain't stepping down. You want to do that? Fire me. And they made my life a living hell for another year until I finally found a different position to say, you know what? I'll go do this. I'll agree to step down from this position to go step over here. And, they wanted me out. So they agreed with it because I made it easy for them. But,
yeah,
but I lost,
and
I lost that position.
My job, I haven't been at my current position for even 6 months. So yeah, same thing. I didn't want to really have to take a lot. Hey, boss, that I just hired in a few months ago.
Yeah.
I love working here and all, but I'm gonna need like 3 days off, probably once a month.
Yeah,
like half day.
It's tough. Hold on, I see a question coming through. I'm just waiting for it to pop up. All right, so Matt asks, that is super big. I don't know why that's so dang big. Anyway, so Matt says, I am an intimately involved father. Wife and I work full time. She earns 30% more. I do as much or more than she does. So far, she wants to be the Disneyland dad. I want equal parenting. And they went on to say, I document all my involvement for over a year with spreadsheets and photo. What do you think my odds are? Honestly, Matt, it depends on where you're at. Most states, a lot of states nowadays are leaning towards 50-50. It's not presumptive 50-50. You have to fight your ass to get it. But a lot of places, if you say, I want 50-50, and you stick with that, unless there's some mitigating reason why that's not feasible, or you've made a mistake, like you've done something or said something, or you've taken the bait. New York, ugh. Actually, I've heard bad things about New York, so I'm not entirely sure, Matt, on that one. You'd have to, check around with some other people and talk to your attorney. I'm not sure.
I like what John said, though.
Let's see.
Just be an equal parenting dad.
Oh yeah, no. Let me grab that. I see that.
And
okay, John. Matt. Yeah, Matt said. Or John had said to Matt, just be an equal parenting dad. You don't need her permission. Excellent point.
Yep. Just do everything you can to be the best father you can with what you have.
And I personally go. Lyle says no. New York is not. Double X says New York is awful. So Matt, okay, so here's the reality, right? And this kind of this falls into with what we were talking about. Find out, check with your attorney to find out what your local court leans toward, right? Because they'll know. I mean, if you've got an attorney who's local, they're going to know the judges, and they'll tell you how the game is fixed. And if the game is fixed that you're not going to win, then you just have to decide, See, it's tough, right? Because you can not fight, and you're definitely not going to get 50-50, or you can push it and potentially lose. If you have the resources and the money to go for it, I would push for 50-50 and not give up on that. But you also have to be realistic on what your odds are, and then weigh that with what the cost is, right? I mean, if you go 50-50 and you get 50-50, but you're $200,000 in debt, you lose your job because you're gone all the time, like we were talking about earlier. Is it worth it? I don't know. It's a tough one. Did I miss anything else? Let's see.
Yeah, and in his case, every other weekend may be a better option for him. It just really depends on your schedule and your life.
But I would say, caveat, right? I would say that, if you have all the documentation that you've been an active parent, you've been taking your kids to the doctor, you've been going to sporting events, you have all that. And again, add those caveats in. Let's say hypothetically, you're not worried about the attorney fees, for whatever reason. And it's, then it's almost like it's worth it to go because potentially you could win, right? I mean, like in the scenario I was talking about before with the person holding all the marbles, if you give up, you're not going to get your half of the marbles, right? So it really, Matt, it really depends on the specifics of what you're dealing with. Now, personally, I would say if you're in a situation to where you're about ready to lose your mind because of the stress and the anxiety, to me, that could be a catalyst to say, okay. But for me, my normal thought process is get the best deal you can get it in the beginning with time and money, because changing it later is a freaking nightmare, right? I mean, so as is that you're paying more typically if you have the time, if you have the kids less. If you have them more, then it's going to be more of an equal thing. I mean, just so people know, most of the time, if you get 50-50 custody, does not mean that you don't pay anything. I have 50-50, and I mean, when I had the 3 kids on there, I was paying enough for the ex to have a house, have a car payment, and not work. So, I mean, obviously that's starting to go down, but I mean, it was a lot of money.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I guess at least here in Louisiana, I'm pretty sure 50-50 means that you don't pay anything.
Well, I
so I
think
didn't know that other states are different. I'm sure it depends.
I think it depends on how equal you are too, right? I mean, does your ex work or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, if mine worked, then the numbers would have been lower. But whenever you got $100,000 in one pile and zero in the other, they're going to take a significant amount to give, even if it's 50-50, well, the other person still doesn't earn anything. So they have to make it equitable. Now, if my ex was making, and I'm just throwing numbers out there. So, I guess I could have used 50,000, but whatever. I mean, if it's near the same, then, and I mean, in California, with it being guideline, they literally key it into a computer. They type in your number, they type in her number, they type in, the times, the costs and everything, and it spits out a formula that says, okay, this is what the payments are. And normally there's a number there, right? I mean, so I don't know if, unless, I don't know. So John S. says 50-50 here and still paying a large support payment. Hey, I want to just mention this. I'm just going to pull this up because Matt says, why is New York so bad? Is it sexist? Is it against the breadwinner? She makes more money than I do. Okay, one thing I want to just throw out there is when I started mine, everyone said California, hates men. It always goes towards the women. You're going to lose. Just give up. And if I would have listened to that, I would not have 50-50, and I would be the kids probably would have ended up leaving the state, and I wouldn't have a relationship with them anymore. So,
yep.
Things are changing. So Matt, I wouldn't necessarily, unless you're out, unless you're ready to, unless you've expended everything, you've fought, you're out of money, you can't do anything anymore. Your attorney is saying, unless you give me another $10,000, I'm done. And you don't have $2, there obviously are some times where you run up against a wall and your options go away. If that's not the case, then don't give up. But be damn careful that you don't make any mistakes, because what they will try to do, and there might be somebody in the live stream right now who had to live through this, to where you get goaded into a trap, you say or do the wrong thing, and they're able to use that to get a protective order, and you're done. So and it doesn't matter, right? You could be the most involved person ever, but if you screw up somehow and you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, send the wrong email, make the wrong comment, use the wrong colorful metaphor, they can turn around and torpedo you on that. John had said to Matt, my advice, let me pull this up on the screen. My advice is to stay out of the courts. Your ex needs to come to her senses. Nobody wins but attorneys. But John, I hear you, man. But the problem is that if she wants more time with the kids, and she's like, okay, no problem, we won't go to court, I get full custody. What do you do to that? I mean, the problem is that you're screwed. And if your ex is, you don't have a choice. I mean, you're screwed. I mean, if you don't have a court order, you could potentially grab onto the kids and say, okay, I'm not giving them back. I'm worried about you and we don't have a court order, so I'm just going to hold on to them. But that normally doesn't happen. And for whatever reason, normally kids side with the toxic person and they'll just stay with them all the time and never do anything. But if they stay with you, they will freak out and have a conniption fit. Let's see if I can shrink this down a little bit. So.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to pull this up because this is funny. Lyle says, my ex and I were happy for 29 years. And then we met.
That's funny.
You know what, Lyle? I mean, I know you've been through the ringer, man, but I appreciate your humor on all of this. So let's see here.
Humor helps everything.
It does. It's hard, though. You know, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm scrolling up on the comments. So, see. Do you see anything in here? Do you see anything in the comments?
I like Marcus's comment. No progress can be made with the narcissist unless the legal system is involved, unfortunately. And that's a huge catch-22.
It is.
Because you got to be, there's a really fine line on helping and hurting with a narcissist, unfortunately. So,
yeah, it's tough because it's like it really seems like that's the only situation. It's where you have to get them to where they feel some pain, right? To where it's like they're like, oh wow, you know, I might get burned on this pan. And as long as they're in that situation to where that doesn't appear to be the case, then you know the court system emboldens it. Unfortunately,
you got to play the game, but if you get ahead in the game, you can't start spiking the ball and taunting and start, you know, showing off. Yeah. Because then they'll catch wind of it and then they'll say, oh, okay, well, watch this.
Right. Boop. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think,
I stole your thing just now.
I love that. I like that. You know, boop. You got to get the tone right, man. I mean, John, John Boston. I mean, he is absolutely right that you would be better off not going to court. And I will say this: do not if you don't have a winning position, unless it's like you have no choice. You know, like for instance, if your ex is taking the kids and you haven't seen him for months, you know, obviously you have no choice, right? I mean, so even if you lose, you have to at least fight the fight. But if you're looking at small stuff, like little things, you know, little annoyances where they're not following the court order, where technically it's a violation, you really have to think about it. Because if you go to court and you don't have a crushing victory, this is my opinion. If you go to court and you don't have a crushing victory, the likelihood that they will come out of it feeling more emboldened because they won, or because they think they won, or they think that you had to fight so hard for this table scrap that to them it is a victory to them because they enjoy the fight, it's not worth it. You have to, to my mind, it has to be, like in your situation, James, what we were talking about. You know, It was more than likely if you went to court, you're going to have to pay that number, right? Maybe more, right? The risk was, you know, whatever.
Oh, it would have definitely been more.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, if you would have fought and made it difficult, you would have ended up paying the attorney. You would have paid her more, maybe double, and you don't get off on the fight, right? So you're not going to feel good because you're not a narcissist. You're not going to feel like, you know, I had to make her spend 6 months dragging it out to finally get this. So, you know, yeah, she won, but it wasn't happy. I mean, it's like you don't feel that. They do. That's kind of the way they look at it.
Well, and without going into too much detail, the settlement, her attorney sent over a listing of assets, and what was on the paper.
You know what?
Was stop. A lot.
I wouldn't even say it. Don't even say it.
Was a lot more, and so.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm just saying anything that might, you know, just on the off chance, you know, be vague as possible.
No, I for sure was going to be super vague.
All right. Don't want to get you in trouble. That's all I'm thinking. Gary
I'm
says,
not really good at math, but it was definitely more. Just put it that way.
Gary says, honestly, does this stuff ever end? You know, okay. There's two answers to that. And the first answer is No, it doesn't end. The problem I have with that answer, though, is it can be very depressing and just soul crushing. The reality is that what happens is the way we deal with it changes and shifts, and the impact does end, right? I mean, I'll take, for instance, I had and I've been contemplating this. I had a situation that happened a couple of weeks ago that was incredibly stressful. I actually even recorded a conversation I had on. I was trying to decide whether to make a video on it, and I just think it's too much to put too much information out there, and it would be too raw. And in the off chance that the person could see it, that would be bad. But what I will tell you is when like in the scenario earlier, when I was talking about getting that envelope on the retirement stuff, when this happened, I did not have a panic attack or an anxiety attack. I didn't get angry. My eye didn't start to twitch. I was very calm, and not calm and PO'd. I was just calm, and I was able to just take a deep breath, go, okay, this information, and it potentially could have been really bad. I hinted a little bit about it on the Discord on what's going on, and ultimately it looks like it's turned out okay. But that's what I'm talking about with the difference. So if had that happened 5-6 years ago, I would have had a panic attack. I would have probably responded and probably made things worse by engaging the ex with some stuff. And this technically isn't even anything that she was involved in. It's not like in your situation where she was saying, I want money. Mine had to do with a different situation where it's like, hey, did you know that there's this bomb that's getting ready to go off that, could completely destroy you? And that's how it changes. It's like you decide what you're going. And I don't know, James, let me ask you this. If you agree with this, you get to the point where you're like, you know what? Years ago, that would have made me mad, but I don't even want to deal with that because it's like, it doesn't do anything for me. So I'm not even going to put any energy into it. I'm going to put my energy over here. Are you at that point yet?
Yeah, for sure. I actually, when you were saying it, I thought of a time where, early on in the divorce and all that crap, where, something was sent to my attorney, and I made the mistake of calling her. Oh. And I was like, what is this? And she just calmly, well, you should talk to your attorney.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What do you mean? Why can't me and you just talk? I mean, you should call your attorney. You should talk to them.
Well, and that's, and the crazy part is talk her victory is you getting angry. That was it, right? And it's, and it just makes them sit up straighter. And I mean, it doesn't matter, female, male, whenever somebody's playing those emotional games, getting you to lose control is the key. And so here's the reality, or the scary part about this. If they get their supply, right? Narcissistic supply from that, if you want to use those terms, then you're fine. But if they want to really crush you, they could turn around and take that conversation, go to their attorney and say, I need a protective order because he's harassing me. And then that's what
I was scared of.
Yeah. I had a situation where I said some stuff to her that could have potentially blown up. Debbie had said something. I was going to grab this real quick. She was saying it to Gary. Says, things for Duane used to be so bad that he would be trying to sleep most of the weekends to recover from the stress. He bounces back better now. And sometimes I still need to, I need to recharge my old batteries. There was another, let's see, William had something. Let me see if this is the one. Okay, so William says, Duane, being that we have a court order in place, how easy is it for her to take away my rights? I have a great attorney. If you have a court order in place, this is just my opinion, not as an attorney, but just from experience, it will be incredibly difficult for her to take your rights away. That's not to say that's not impossible, but if you have a standing court order that there's no major changes, for her to make a modification to that, there has to be significant reason. Now, one of the things people will do oftentimes is that significant reason will be a move away. It's like, we live in, California, and I want to move to, whatever, to Northern California or Seattle, out of the state. Custody has to change because you can stay on the same schedule. But for the most part, and that's why it's so important to get get the best thing you can get initially, because it is really, really tough to change a family court order without some significant reason to get it changed. So for the most part, William, double check with your attorney to find out what their opinion is. But my gut feeling is for her to come and say, if let's say you guys have 50-50. Oh, let me caveat this. If you have 50-50 and she says she wants 80-20, you should now be a weekend dad, and you guys are staying in the same area, really tough. However, if she has 80 and you have 2, and you're every other weekend, and she wants to move away to where you won't be able to see the kids for the weekend, then that's a tougher situation. So again, it really depends on the specifics. So if you want to share those, William, we could talk about that for a little bit. But and that's
did you see?
No, I didn't. What?
Sorry. Did you see Fact Camp? Fact Camp.
The one that says my suggestion.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, that's a good idea. Freudian slip there. My suggestion about dealing with lawyers is to instruct the lawyer to inform you specifically if you are going to be giving up anything at any point in time. And you know what? And I think it's also important, and this is one of the questions I asked early on. I had asked my attorney, because people were telling me, give her everything, let her have everything. And I said, hey, and some people were like, hey, why don't you negotiate money for time? And I didn't like this idea, but they were like, well, maybe you could say, yes, you can go out of state, but child support is going to be, no alimony, no child support, whatever, really low child support. And I asked my attorney, I'm like, hey, some people are asking me to ask this question. Can I do this? He goes, yeah, you guys can do whatever you want. If you both agree, you can do it. I said, okay. And the problem is, and this is, I think, Fact Camp made a great point. Had I not asked the second question, and I said, because and if I was like, oh, okay, well, I could just offer this. And then I said, well, what's the risk? Can she come back later and say she's not getting enough money? And she goes, oh, absolutely. Yeah. In a year, she could come back and say, she has full custody of the kids and she doesn't have enough money and she wants guideline support, and they would hammer me. And I'm like, oh, I won't be taking that risk. So, and the other flip side to that is oftentimes attorneys don't tell you all these nuances, right? I mean, they live it, so they kind of know it, and they don't realize that you don't know. And there's a lot of things that I didn't know that I assumed were a certain way. And when I finally deep dived into it, I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. So,
yeah.
I don't know if that was your case.
When there's nothing typical about a divorce like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's really no manual or any kind of guideline for anything. So.
Though I am trying to write one. that's
That'd be awesome.
Goal. Fact Camp also said it's better not to talk to your ex if you can help it, unless you know what you can get unless you know you can get incriminating evidence. Mine has a problem with not considering the words that come out of her mouth. and I would agree. I mean, as soon as you realize that you're dealing with somebody toxic, focusing on hybrid no contact, where you minimize your communication, you don't do it in person, you only do it in writing, is super, super important.
Yep. I used to call it keeping it business professional with my ex.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the only time I talk to her, text or phone call, is if it's about our kid, period. Because anything else, I've been burned way too many times.
Yeah,
where it gets into this conversation and she ends up throwing some kind of little dart, some kind of little put down, or there's always got to be something that's said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time.
It's definitely a thing. That is for sure.
It's the thing with these people.
There goes another one. That's 2 or 3, maybe 4. Let's see. John had said, Duane, my attorney, flip-flopped several times on properties I have prior to being married. Turns out there were no standards. What I thought would happen didn't. Yeah, see, that's the other thing. I've had conversations. I have a friend of mine who's getting ready to go through just a knockdown drag out. And he's in that phase where he's like, it's going to be this way. I'm like, dude, you're out of your freaking mind. Yeah, I mean, technically it should go that way, but that's not how it generally goes. And it's really tough, right? I mean, because you walk into this thing feeling or thinking it should be fair, right? You think, hey, I'm going to go to court. I'll get my day in court. I'll be able to speak the truth, and the truth shall set
Everything
me
will
free.
be fair.
Yeah, bullshit.
It'll be like a Disney movie.
Nope. It's possible, but I mean, it's like you go in with unrealistic expectations, and you come out just like a freaking bombing victim. So,
well, and we tend to assume that they're going to have the same peace mindset that we have, and they don't at all.
I'm gonna grab something that I missed some of what Matt had said, but let's see. Do I want to? Oh crap! He used profanity. I'm not going to put it on the screen. But he said, I should have 80-20 really, but I believe my son needs a mother and a father. Hey guys, here's. I get that, right? Because that's kind of the driving force I had. When I started this whole thing, I'm like, you know what? I just want 50-50. I don't. I mean, I'm not going to go for the jugular. And that was a mistake. It's tough in hindsight, right? I mean, if I would have gotten more time, and let's say I would have been able to get 80-20, I think, after having a little over 8 years, coming up on 9 years of experience with this, it probably would have been better for all my kids to have more time in a more stable environment. However, I was in that same mindset. It's like, well, I can't come with a really cogent argument to say that I should have more time. But it's one of those things where, if you have my advice to anyone here, if you have the opportunity to get more time and you strongly suspect the other person is a toxic, narcissistic, potentially personality disorder, cluster B type person, get as much time as you can, or if it's a really knockdown drag out and you think that they don't get their supply from the kids and they won't exercise it, that sometimes happens to where you get 50-50, but the toxic person, either mom or dad, is always working, is always busy, is always, dropping the kids off with you or someone else. Then I would say that's great. So let me back up. What I'm saying is, let's say you get 50-50 and your ex is giving you more time. If you have that little thought in your mind going, you know what? This is messed up. I'm paying 50-50 and, I'm doing more. So, they should pay their fair share. Don't do it. Just take the time. Right. And I had a friend of mine who was doing just that, a guy friend. His wife nutted up, left, hanging out with different people, never saw the kids, never came by to see him. And I remember talking to him at one point. I'm like, man, you shouldn't be paying, that's BS. You got effectively full custody. You should be paying less. And I was in that mindset we were talking about before, like not one penny more. And what he told me, and I couldn't understand it at the time, he said, you know what? I'm actually paying for peace because I know if I go and I say, hey, the kids are with me 90% of the time, child support should drop because it's not 50-50. She's going to ask for more time. She's going to basically make it harder for the kids. So I'm leaving it status quo to give the kids more stability. Yes, it's costing me more money, but I'm doing okay. And honestly, and maybe some of you guys out there tonight are in that same mode I was in, where you're like, no, that's bull. That's wrong. That is not right. And but the reality, I mean, neither one of us were wrong, but I think his stance was the better stance, because I was looking at the battle. I was looking tactically how to tactically deal with this situation in this particular moment. He was looking strategically at the war on how do I get where I want to go? Where do I want to be down the road? And he made the right choice. And it's tough to get to that point. It is really tough to pivot to that point.
Well, and it's really easy to be in that mindset you were in too, where you're ready to battle.
Oh, I was so angry. I was angry. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I understandably so you're angry. I mean, they they know exactly what buttons to push, when to push them,
Mm-hmm.
how hard to push them, and
It
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 just sucks.
it's man, it's one of those things where, you know, I how am I trying to say this? Not too long ago, well, before the channel, but 5, 6 years ago, James, if you and I met I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, man, if a few years ago we're buddies, we meet after work, we're having a coffee. I don't drink beer, so whatever. We're having a nice little beverage of choice, and you told me what happened. I would have been one of those friends that said, don't give her
Yeah.
a freaking thing. That's bull. I mean, she doesn't deserve anything. Whatever. And that response. And here's the thing to remember, guys. That response, typically when people say that, is coming from their own experiences where they're angry and it's triggering their own past trauma that they haven't dealt with. And people would bring stuff up or tell me their story, and I would have that anger little flash, and it's not healthy, but
There's
it's easy to get in there.
and there's also a lot of misinformation and people giving just false false information, like, oh man, you don't have to pay that. That's
Yeah.
if you get 50-50, you don't have to pay anything in child support, or whatever.
Oh yeah, a lot of people say that.
Tons of different examples. So you got to be careful, because I got to a point where I pretty much just only told certain people, because
Oh
otherwise it would be the same. Oh man, you're a wussy if you pay her the money, or whatever. So it's not even worth it.
what I'll say on that, I mean, the flip side to that, and this is what would happen to me when I was going through the phase where I was starting to get better, to where this stuff wouldn't bother me, and something would happen. I'm like, okay, I'm going to deal with it. I got this pathway to do it, and then I would tell someone else about it, and they would say that's bullshit. Like everything you just said, they would say that. It would pull. It's like I wasn't secure in my foundation on that, and I would start to pivot to get angry and to start having those trigger responses to it. So it's also bad because people can make you question your own thing, your own thought, right? I mean, you can be sitting there thinking, you know what? Okay, like in your situation, okay, I got it. I've looked at the whole picture. The best solution for me right now is to pay this thing. It sucks, but I can, we talked about it, but I mean, you had the ability to get to the money. I mean, it was doable, and you said, okay, and a lot of times that's hard to come to that decision. And if anyone else is telling you you're making the wrong decision, you're just emboldening them. You give her that now, and she's going to come back for more. You need to make it to where it's painful, so that they're not thinking that they can come back to the trough. And I'm actually, as I'm saying this, I wouldn't surprise me if people said the exact same thing what I was just saying to you.
Some of them did, and the problem with it is, it makes you start questioning your decision, and you're thinking, man, maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't
Give
settle,
up or whatever.
and you're like, wait, no, I know what I went through.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to be grounded enough
Yeah.
to know that you went through it. They didn't go through it, you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody like you, Duane, went through something similar, so you understand. But outside of this community, they didn't live it. So that's what you have to keep in mind. Is at the end of the day, it's your life, and it's your decision. Like, nobody else can make it for you.
That's true.
Like I said, if you lived it, then you know what it was like. And for me, the pain of dealing with her hell was not. It wasn't even worth seeing her in person. Yeah. Much less talking on the phone with her. So
that's an excellent point.
That's where how I made the decision.
Jack says, X owes me child support from last year. I'm just letting it go. Not worth the drama. Hey, Jack, it's good to see you. Hopefully, hopefully your country's not burning down anymore. Have the fire stopped in Australia yet, or is it still on fire?
I haven't heard. I haven't really looked, because it's kind of saddening to read about stuff like that in the news.
Yeah, we have a few people from Australia down there. I don't think anybody's been directly affected by it yet, but I'm not entirely sure. So, anyways, I digress. But yeah, what she's saying is, I mean, and that's the key, right? You got to look at, is it really worth the cost? You know, I mean, and I think it was John that said earlier, if it's millions of dollars, then it's worth going to court. And I think that's, it's kind of like, is it really worth? Oh, she says the fires are still ongoing. Wow. Lyle says they have tornadoes made of fire. Yeah, it's crazy. Did I miss something? What was
Matt said, I guess I'm just scared and looking for some positive feedback, but I guess blowing smoke up my boop wouldn't help either.
Well, okay, but see, that's a really, really great point. And let's just pause on that for a second, because a lot of times, and I have made videos on this before. I don't know if you have, but they live in fear, right? I mean, so to try to scare you, even if it's, I mean, and I see this a lot where, and this is typically what happens. I know it's not your situation, Matt, but somebody, there'll be 80-20 custody. So, the mom asks for more money, and the first thing the dad says is, "I'm going for full custody. You're a horrible person," yada yada yada. And then they get all freaked out because, oh my God, made it happen. Engaging with these people is always a risk, right? And they are going to do everything in their power to, like what Matt's saying, to scare you, to freak you out, if they think that you're happy, and you're like, "Hey, Matt's doing really well, and he's happy, and there's a skip in his step. Well, let me see if I can knock that right off. Hey, Matt, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go for full custody and terminate your parental rights. I'll be sending you the court paperwork." And then, are you skipping anymore? No, you're freaking the hell out. And just, I mean, keep that in mind. I mean, keep in mind that they live in that mode, and they love that, and they love getting the reaction. And typically what happens, and I don't know, maybe James, maybe this is what was the catalyst for your thing, is when they see that you've moved on and you're happy, they want to knock you off that pedestal.
Not with the ex related to the video I made, but the ex, my daughter's mom. I've gotten to where I can tell when she's in a relationship with somebody, everything's generally fine, right? Man, if they break up, I'm like, man, you can tell something's up, because she's just ready to just be like, oh, I still got that James guy. Let me screw up his day real quick. Let me just throw, and that's happened. Let me just throw some random text asking for XYZ just to. It's been a while since I've done it. Let me throw them off today.
Yep. Yeah, and that stuff happens a lot.
Be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, it looks like we are coming up on over an hour. So
definitely been over an hour.
I think we should wrap this up. So, but before I do that, let me do this. I hope you guys can come join me on Dad Talk Today on Tuesday, and see that conversation. I'm going to get interviewed by Eric Carroll. So check that out. I'll try to put if this is in a replay, I'll try to put that in the the description. Or follow me over on Facebook. But so on that, hey James, thanks for hanging out with me and having this discussion. I think it was a good one. I hope everyone appreciated it. Can you tell everyone where to find you before we go?
Yeah, on YouTube, James the Broviver is my, I guess, screen name you would call it.
Yeah, check him out. And you just started making some more videos, so you're planning on jumping back into it. I know you kind of took a little bit of a break.
Yeah, it's tough with school, but I got to try to make it work.
Yeah, no, he's got a good perspective. So guys, check him out.
Definitely
subscribe to him. Follow his stuff, comment, do all that kind of stuff. I see Josh Penn just jumped on. Josh, buddy, please send me an email. Duane at dadsurvivingdivorce.com. I really want to talk to you. Even if we do it offline, so please reach out to me. So on that, guys, thanks for hanging out with us, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.